today's security is very much about democracy. And my name is Maja Mazurkiewicz, and that's a special edition of The Anatomy of Disinformation, straight from the Warsaw Security Forum. And my guest today is Michael McGrath, Commissioner for Democracy, Justice and the Rule of Law, all of which are in deep crisis today. And Michael, do you feel that you hold the key to the future of the European Union?
Well, thank you, Maya, first of all, for the opportunity to have a chat with you. It is a very important portfolio. It really is foundational to the existence of the European Union, and all of our other objectives, such as economic development, for example, cannot happen unless we have stable democracy and we have a rule of law system that is respected. I think we have work to do. We are engaged in an annual rule of law process with all of the member states, where we were in a position in July to report significant progress among many member states across a whole range of different areas, such as anti-corruption framework, the independence of the judicial system, having a free and independent media, as well as checks and balances within the democratic system and the justice system. I think you always want to see more. We have seen the majority of the recommendations from last year's Rule of Law report have been acted upon and either fully implemented or perhaps only partially implemented. And we engage with the member states on an ongoing basis. I and my team within the Commission are available to assist and support and guide member states on their rule of law journey. I see my role as making it as easy as possible for the member states that are willing and that want to make progress in rule of law. We are there to assist them. But beyond that, if it doesn't work, we also have the hard tools that regrettably on occasion we have to use because rule of law is not an optional extra for member states. It's a core binding legal obligation of European Union membership. And so there are times when we have to step in and use the powers that we have, such as the conditionality regulation, such as infringement proceedings, and so on.
And do you think that they are working?
I think it depends on each individual case. We can certainly point to successes in different member states where recommendations made in the Rule of Law report have resulted in proactive and positive changes and improvements in the rule of law environment. But I also have to be honest and acknowledge that there are examples where much more progress is needed. And the good thing about the rule of law process is that it represents the objective assessment of the Commission on an independent basis. We look at every single country, all 27, we do an assessment of their current rule of law environment, and then we make recommendations, and there are recommendations for every country.
Well, recommendations are great, but is Europe really helpless?
No, we have a lot of power, and we have exercised powers under the conditionality regulation, under the horizontal enabling condition, in essence where we have a link between rule of law and access to EU funding. And now in the context of the next EU budget, as you know, the Commission back in July published its proposal for the multi-annual financial framework, and we are proposing that there would be an even closer link between respect for rule of law and compliance with the Charter of Fundamental Rights on the one hand, and on the other hand, access to EU funding, because we believe that if you are a member of the European Union, you should abide by the same rules as everybody else. And if you want to enjoy all the benefits and privileges of EU membership, including funding, that respect for rule of law is a must. It's not a la carte. You must comply with the rule of law. It's the law of the European Union. It's in our treaty. It's written in legislation adopted by member states and the European Parliament, and of course it has been interpreted many times by the Court of Justice of the European Union.
And is it a clear message for Viktor Orban of Fico in Slovakia?
It's a message for all governments of the European Union that the Commission stands ready to support you if you are acting in good faith and you want to improve the rule of law environment in your country. But if you're not, and if you are point blank refusing to engage, or in fact if you are going in the opposite direction and you are damaging the fabric of rule of law in the member state, then we will not hesitate to act. And that's why you mentioned Hungary. It is the only country where We have invoked the rule of law conditionality regulation, and also we have a recovery and resilience plan under Next Generation EU, which has a range of super milestones that are rule of law related. And then we have the Article 7 procedure that the member states are still considering. And in October, there will be a further discussion at the General Affairs Council on the state of play in Hungary in the context of the Article 7. So we have extensive powers and tools. I would rather that we didn't have to use them, and I would rather cajole, encourage and support member states to improve their rule of law environment. But if they're not willing, or if they're going the opposite direction, we will not hesitate to step in and use the very powerful tools that we have, while recognising in the next EU budget we want to have a stronger set of powers.
In terms of legislation, and that's important, but what's the message for the citizens of the EU? Well, the trust is really something that Russia is fighting with.
Well, the message for the citizens of the EU is that it is your democracy in your member state. It is precious. It cannot be taken for granted. None of us can afford to be complacent about democracy. It is facing threats. We have to address those threats, and that's why we will come forward in November with our proposal for a European Democracy Shield that will seek to better protect democracy within the European Union. And fundamentally, it is about ensuring that we have free and fair elections. It's the people's democracy, and all that I want in the area of democracy is that the people can exercise their sovereign right and freely decide who to choose or who to vote for and who should govern them in their own member state. That we have to protect that right, and we have to be realistic and acknowledge there are threats. There is state-sponsored interference, there are hybrid threats, there are cyber attacks. These are the realities of 2025, and we have to deal with them.
And awareness is key, and you said we have to deal with it. So how can we deal with it?
I think in a number of ways. There's no one silver bullet that will protect European democracy, and equally there's no initiative from Brussels that will fully copper fasten European democracy. Democracy is owned at a local level, and I firmly believe that. I was an elected representative in Ireland for 25 years before becoming an EU Commissioner, and I served at my local town level and then a wider county area and then national parliament and then serving in government, and now I have the privilege of being a European Commissioner. So I have seen democracy in action, and I have seen what makes it work, and what makes it work is trust between the citizen and the institutions and the political system. But what also works is where politicians and institutions listen to people and connect with them and give them a sense of ownership that this is your democracy. We are here to serve you. And if you feel that we need to be doing things better or differently, then we have to listen. That's the essence of European democracy. So we will be investing in areas like digital literacy, media literacy, fact-checking, citizen empowerment, all about giving the citizens the tools that they need to navigate what is an increasingly complex and fast-moving information environment. But we also need some hard structures, including the Democratic Resilience Centre that President von der Leyen announced a few weeks back in the State of the Union address, because there is interference. Much of it is happening online. It is orchestrated and coordinated, and we have to have the tools at our disposal throughout the European Union to detect it, but also to respond to it in a quick fashion.
So when the Democracy Centre will be ready, because that's something that's concrete.
So we will bring forward the European Democracy Shield proposal in November. It will travel with a civil society strategy, which will be the first time there will be an EU-wide civil society strategy, and a proposal for a platform to facilitate further dialogue and engagement with civil society. There's a lot of good work already being done to safeguard European democracy. We have a rapid alert system. I have seen examples of best practice in member states. When I visited Paris, for example, the Visionum Centre, an outstanding example of what can be done. So the Resilience Centre will be about coordinating a lot of the good work that is being done. We're engaging now with the member states on the precise structure and governance arrangements of the Resilience Centre. But I am confident that with the right support, we can get this up and running quite quickly.
I have a very quick question on the rapid alert system and with the Resilience Centre, as it will be a continuation, I understand, of it. There were any issues and a lot of civil society organizations were flagging that platforms were not responding. So do you have something to force platforms to get on our side?
Our digital rule book is the Digital Services Act, and it sets out very clearly what are the obligations on the in-scope platforms, including social media companies, to mitigate the systemic risks arising from the content on their platform to the integrity of elections. And you will be aware the Commission is taking action in relation to TikTok, for example, under that heading and that specific obligation within the Digital Services Act around the protection of the integrity of elections. So the Democracy Shield is not a review of the DSA. The DSA remains in place, and we are fully committed to its implementation and its enforcement, working with the digital services coordinators throughout the European Union.
Well, and they are still not ready in most of the countries.
Well, the DSA is the law of the land, and it is being implemented. And where actions have been undertaken by the European Commission, we have to be rigorous, we have to follow due process, we have to make sure that the party that we are taking the action against has a right to respond, because invariably any adverse finding by the European Commission is going to be contested. We know that as a reality, and we want to make sure that when we do reach a conclusion that it stands the test and the rigour of an appeal or a court challenge, which of course is very likely.
We've been mentioning the media literacy, critical thinking. Is strategic communication also a part of the whole package?
Strategic communications? Yes, I mean, that's part of our ongoing work, but we also have to be clear that the competence around the holding of elections is a matter for the member states. The Commission can provide expertise, support and guidance. We do so in various ways by bringing all of the electoral statutory authorities together. We have a European Cooperation Network on Elections, for example, where we help to share best practice and we support them in all of the work that they do. It's a matter for the political parties and the political establishment in each member state to make their case to the people. We will never take sides in an electoral contest. For us, it is about protecting the integrity of the democratic right of the citizens of Europe when it comes to casting their vote and deciding their future and who they wish to govern them. Of course, we have work to do on communicating our own message, communicating our own work programme and the work that we are doing as a Commission. But when it comes to legislation, we propose, the co-legislators agree and adopt, and then ultimately we ensure implementation and enforcement. So the Commission, as the executive authority and the guardian of the treaties, has a crucial role to play in the protection of democracy and upholding the rule of law in the European Union, and we will do all we can to fulfil our mandate.
You've said about listening, and indeed I very much agree that's a key issue. Russian, in terms of the foreign manipulation, they know European citizens better than we know ourselves. And do you think that European politicians really take a lesson and they listen to the citizens?
I think we do have to listen more and we have to listen better. It's a matter for the politicians in the member states to conduct politics in the way that they see fit. But we know from experience that when people feel invested in their democracy, when they feel a sense of ownership, when they feel that their concerns and their aspirations are being taken seriously and are reflected in the policies and the conduct of political parties and politicians, then they are more likely to support them. I mean, that's, I think, a lesson from our history that all of us involved in frontline politics will have understood. But I have faith in the citizens of Europe. I think they appreciate the value of democracy. They know that it was hard won, and we are only 35 years or so in parts of Europe where we have democratic governments in place. So the alternative and the threat to our democracy is all too real for many people who have grown up with regimes and in regimes that have not been democratic, and they've seen the consequences of what living in those regimes was like.
And we're also in the war times, and democracy is much different right now. Do you think that people still feel this urge for democracy or rather the security?
Well, I think they go hand in hand. I think that democracy and security are complementary. If people feel that their security is not assured then I think that will influence their views of the democratic system and indeed their views of those who are governing them. That is a reality. But one of our main obligations as a European Union is to make sure that people feel safe. And as a result of the Russian aggression and the invasion of Ukraine, tragically, we now have war on our continent, and we have seen the recent brazen incursions by Russia into the airspace of EU member states and NATO member states. And I think it's a stark reminder that Russia is the aggressor. It is testing the waters. It is checking what the response is going to be. And I think we have to hold firm because they do not have a democracy in Russia. We have democracy within the 27 member states of the EU. Nobody's saying it's perfect, but I do believe overall democracy in the EU is strong, but we have to be clear-eyed about the risks and the challenges that we face, and we have to do everything we possibly can to safeguard European democracy into the future.
Well, we might not have the tanks on our lands yet, but we definitely have them in our information space, and that's what Russia is doing for years. So what do you expect next?
Well, I think the state-sponsored attacks are becoming more frequent and becoming more sophisticated, and so too must our response. And that is why we have to look at the institutional setup we have at the moment, look at the safeguards we have in place, and there are many, and in general I think they have worked well, but more of the same is not going to be enough into the future. This is a very fast-moving, rapidly evolving area of policy, and the nature of the threat is becoming more complex, more sophisticated, and so too must our response. And that's why in the Democracy Shield we will set out what our response is now and how we intend to use the latest technology and revise governance and institutional arrangements, working with the member states to give us every chance of protecting democracy in the European Union.
So what are the key issues? Because the attitudes of citizens are dropping in terms of trust, in terms of democracy as well, in terms of passion for Europe.
I think the European people are committed Democrats. Just because they may choose one party or another party from time to time doesn't mean they're not committed to democracy. I think they hold it dear. Many of them have lived with the alternative or one of the alternatives only 35, 40 years ago. So they know the reality and the freedom, the quality of life, the economic opportunity, the values of the European Union are best and only protected in democratic arrangements. And I believe that the people support democracy. They want more democracy, not less. They might get frustrated with democracy or get frustrated with individual governments or political parties. That is their right. And if they choose another democratic party, that is absolutely their right. But let's protect that fundamental pillar of our society, which is democracy, because without that, in my mind, everything else falls away.
There's a lot of work to do and a lot of work for you to do as well. So the last question is, how does the success look like? Where you want to see yourself and Europe at the end of the candidacy?
Well, I think success in this part of my portfolio looks like a stronger democracy in the next 4 or 5 years than we have today, that we put in place the buffers and the safeguards to protect European democracy, and that when it comes to the next round of European elections and beyond all of the national elections that take place, that we have free and fair elections, that people can exercise their democratic entitlement without interference, and that they get the politicians and the governments that they choose. That is the fundamental test, in my mind, of success. That's what it looks like, that our democracy remains true and our democracy continues to serve the people, even if they choose different actors and different political groupings. That's the essence of democracy.
Michael, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Maya.
That was a special edition of The Anatomy of Disinformation. Until next time, keep calm and think deeply.